Hi, this is going to be a very quick video about how the spin wheel works in EZPZ Toolkit. So to get to it, we have a bunch of examples. If we go into the standalone examples folder and then go to spin wheel or C number 23, we have a bunch of spin wheels. So if we just go ahead and press play, we press a button, we see that it just spins a wheel. So the idea with this is it's basically replicating what you might see in O Week or a festival or something where you maybe go win a prize. So it has a bunch of nice properties. I guess if you just want this particular effect, you can use this. How does it work? Here, this is just essentially just a squished cylinder. So if we kind of expand this hierarchy thing, there's a rigid body object at the very top, and we have a physics utility here that allows it to spin. And then just underneath, the graphics of it is just, like I said before, a squished cylinder. And then this arrow here, which doesn't really look like much of an arrow, you can replace it with something that's more like an arrow, but it's just indicating a section of the disk so you can see it spinning. Now, the way it spins in this particular example is it's just basically talking to the physics utility here, and the physics utility has a bunch of functions, including spin on axis, and then we have x, y, z. In this case, it's z. It's just basically spinning along the axis of where this blue arrow is, so that's the z. But if we wanted to, we can make it spin along another axis. So let's say we wanted to make it spin on the y-axis, like this. It will spin on the y-axis. Like why you would want to do that, I guess you'd have to figure out that for yourself, but it is possible. So maybe you could simulate the spinning of a coin or something like that. So that's the very, very, very basics of how it works. So what can we do with it that's kind of interesting? Sometimes we might want to use it to just randomly select an item. Instead of an instant random thing, we want a kind of a delay or build some tension of how that randomness occurs, kind of replicating the effect of what the actual physical spin wheel does. How do we get it to point to what we end up with? So this is one way we can do it. So we have just a generic label, and you can kind of see that as it spins to these particular labels on the wheel, the label up down here gets updated. So we can just continually do that. How is that working? So for this particular setup, it's working really, really simply, almost a little bit hacky. The spinning rig here, it's just the same spinning rig, but there is this box collider on the rig, and what this does is it goes through a whole bunch of trigger areas. So if we just turn on the gizmos over here, we can kind of see the colliders as the trigger area. So if we just click on the label rig, you can see that each label has a trigger area, and every time the black arrow goes into the trigger area, each trigger area has an event associated with it. In this case, all it's doing is it's just talking to this generic label down here, which is this label rig, and it's just basically setting its text to the text on the label. So this can be anything that we want, but in this case it kind of made sense to put whatever we see up here to be the same text every time. I'm just going to press play. I think at the very beginning it's not going to set it to spin 0 because it hasn't actually entered the trigger area, but as soon as we actually run it, it'll trigger that event. So if that's an annoying thing to you, you can kind of just set it to be the correct thing at the initial state. But essentially that's what's happening. As this black arrow pointer goes through, just going to click on the right thing. This box collider is triggering a corresponding trigger area. I guess it's just, in this case, it's spin 3, so that would be label 3. And then what this is doing is it's essentially just changing the text on this label here. So you can kind of repurpose that to your own designs. But yeah, this text can be anything that we want. So I guess if we just say that label 3 now becomes near something obvious like that, we would expect that every time the thing goes into, every time the arrow passes through the spin 3 label, it turns the text into that. And that's all it's doing. Now we can take advantage of the same mechanism to do a page flipping thing. If we just have a look at this last rig on the side, if we say spin, it looks like we're spinning through like a bunch of selections. In fact, we are. The label thing up here is not modified from how these things are set up. The difference, or the new thing here is that in each of the trigger areas, it's essentially just talking to a list. I guess we can call this a toy list, which is this guy over here. And then it's just continuously saying next. Every time the black arrow thing goes into a trigger area in the label rig, we're just simply saying next. So if you have a look at the event here for the arrow detector, let's turn on the gizmo again so we can see the trigger areas. That it's essentially just all talking to the box cycler list, and it's just saying next. Basically, this is just like your regular box cycling thing, which you can have a look at inside this thing as one of the examples. I think there's also a corresponding video in the playlist that you can have a look at. But essentially, it's just taking a pre-existing thing and then taking advantage of its pre-existing functionality. I think that's it. You can probably think of lots of different ways you can modify this to your own purposes, and hopefully that's helpful. End of video.